Hey, friends, welcome to episode 555, Triple Nickels this week on the podcast. And once again, Chad Smart joining me. I am back home, finally recording a podcast. It's been a few weeks. And Chad, it's been a few weeks since we've talked here on the pod. So welcome back. How are things going?
I'm unemployed, so
Ah,
that's how things are going.
okay. Okay.
Yeah. Can we just make this an hour long, me shooting on a major studio? And we'll,
Well, they don't sponsor. So, yeah.
then they'll spawn. Yeah, that's true. But they also have nothing really to do with wrestling right now. So I think it'd be fine.
Yeah, they would be all right.
I
Well, I do
mean,
know that you took a little road trip. And I didn't realize how
uh,
close you said it was Ontario, right?
yes,
I didn't realize
California,
Ontario.
not Canada.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense. I'm like, how in the world? Okay, I didn't look at a map, and I don't.
Did you actually
Okay,
think I went to Canada?
I did. That's why I
Oh,
always made the joke about you not. Okay, okay, now it makes
okay.
sense. Well, you
Yes,
were at
there's
AEW last week.
there's Ontario, California, which
Gotcha.
is where
That,
the LA Kings minor league AHL team, the Reign, play.
okay.
Which they should do a. You would think they would do a WWF night and bring in Roman, but
Yeah.
they did not. But yes, AEW Dynamite 300 / Collision 100 was there this previous week as we record this, and yeah, I figured since I was unemployed, I could actually get out there in time for the show,
Yeah.
and yeah, we left at I don't know about 2:15 and got there at 3:45. So, and it's a 50-mile
Yeah.
drive, allegedly, which was much better than last time I went there for the AHL All-Star game, and we left at 3:30 and pulled in at 6 o'clock to the parking lot. Um, but yeah, I figured, again, as unemployed, I could go. I was at Collision 1, so good to be at Collision 100 as well. So in 2 3 years, when they do Collision 200, we'll see what's going on if my body can make it. Which here's the bad thing, and I could have told you this off air, but because you'll get it. People listening who don't really know me probably won't understand. But we're walking into the arena, and there's an employee with a wheelchair, and he's like trying to. I'm not paying attention to him. He looks at me and gets my attention, and he's like, "Do you need a wheelchair?" I'm like, "No," and I'm like, "Granted, for people listening, I have a bad hip. I don't have part of my hip bone. I walk with a limp. It is getting worse, and especially when I sit for extended periods of time and my leg tightens up. But Wednesday, I felt I was walking fairly normal. Apparently, I was not. Yeah, getting old sucks. But
Yes, it
I
does.
was like, you dumb whippersnapper. But yeah, it was cool. It was good. One complaint had about AEW is their merchandising and their lack of, I guess, is a better word. And the merchandise stand on Wednesday was all the way in the back. Like if you were walking around the arena, you had to go all the way around to where it was blocked off, like right in the center, like where the stage would have been if you were inside the arena. But for some reason, they had the concourse blocked off as well. And yeah, they had the little merch stand set up back there. And the line was super long, again, because you have one merch stand for everybody. So I just took a quick glance and then left. But
That surprises me with their relationship with pro wrestling teams.
you
You
would
would
think, and
think it'd
especially
be,
after 5 years, they would learn that, hey, maybe we should bring more T-shirts and merchandise to our shows. But I would say that at All In, there's probably going to be 5 All In type shirts, probably one Hangman Page shirt, one MJF, and maybe a Mercedes Monet or a Tony Storm shirt, and that's probably about it.
wow. That does surprise me though,
Yeah,
considering the relationship, and especially like you said, after 5 years, uh,
yeah,
I I love looking at that kind of stuff though, like the branding and the marketing
mm,
and seeing what they're putting out there. Because I think we've talked about this before, with Jim Crockett Promotions back in the '80s. I mean,
mm,
they had the star power to move action figures and
mm,
lunchboxes and T-shirts and stuff, but I think the mentality back then was that was too much of the sports entertainment and not enough of the wrestling.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like Vince McMahon, for all of his faults as a human being, that's one place he excelled in that, that additional side revenue promotional stuff. And, when you send in, and we're going to talk about this more in a minute too, stuff from Russell Crate and stuff, I know a lot of that is AEW branded merchandise. So I wonder, if they've come more to rely on because back in the day, with Attitude Era specifically, you know, there were superstars making $1 million a quarter on their merch. Stone Cold Steve Austin specifically, but I think the NWO and WCW, the T-shirt, 25, 26 years later, almost 30 years later, people are still buying. I know it's the WWE's incarnation of it, but you still see NWO shirts out in those big crowds at wrestling events. So very interesting.
Yeah. You would think merchandising, and it's interesting. You talk about Jim Crockett not doing the promotion, and one of my hobbies this year that I've gotten into that we've talked about is reading more and doing more like historical reading about baseball specifically, but also looking at basketball and to an extent football, and realizing that in those early 80s days, it wasn't like it is today. Like it wasn't until like 1984 that I think the NBA playoffs were shown live. They were usually shown on a tape delay.
Oh, really?
Because no one was watching until like the Bird and Magic rivalry, Michael Jordan coming in, and baseball even. I didn't realize, I forgot that in 1981 there was a strike. I only know about the 94 strike. And so it's like, trying to look back and being like, okay, how popular was other sporting merchandise as well? I mean, other than baseball cards, which collected as a kid, but were people wearing the jerseys? Were they, before Nike came along with the Air Jordan, and which now is a huge side business all in of itself. Neither of us are sneakerheads, but you can go online and find places that are selling a pair of shoes for thousands of dollars. And I don't get it, but I buy cheap shoes. Yeah. And I don't buy Nike. So
that is interesting, because I'm not a big sports fan. I grew up in St. Louis though. And I do remember I still have the shirt actually from the 82 World Series when they won. It's, a white t-shirt with the Cardinals logo and then all of their handwritten names on the shirt. And, I kept it obviously for the sentimental value. And of course you are a bandwagon fan when your team is in the World Series, whether you're a fan or not. My dad and my parents were more Cardinal, and we would go to games and stuff, but I never like gravitated to it to where I needed to collect things or get autographs or anything like that. But I don't remember kids wearing jerseys or things like that. It was more of the commemorative, we won, or you'd get the pennant, hang it up in your room or that kind of stuff. But I don't remember like a big, and I guess we were probably tweens or early teens when the starting lineup figures started coming out with like the NFL players, and I think they did a basketball collection and Major League Baseball, but I never got into that obviously either. So, but I know it's still a big merchandising thing too. I think they've actually restarted that, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. I think obviously the advent of cable television probably helped, as with wrestling. And then especially in the, late 90s with the internet coming along and popularity. But then you also, creating the superstars, like we said, Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky.
You have those figures that are seemingly bigger than the game itself. But
Ernie Els.
What's that?
I said Ernie Els. He's a professional golfer.
Oh, okay. But I think that sports are unique in that it's that one thing. And for me, wrestling on certain shows, that it's best experienced live, especially now with spoilers online. And I guess it's not really a spoiler if somebody's posting live reacting to something, but you know what I mean? Like you don't want to, I know a lot of times you will avoid social media or even Snapchat because of,
Mhm.
if it's the night of a PLE and you're not able to watch live. So, and I think that a lot of sports fans are probably in that mindset too. Like, but nowadays you can pretty much listen or watch from your phone if you're
Oh.
on the road and you have someone around you that doesn't care that you're sitting there listening to that too. I like I said earlier this year, I watched the Royal Rumble in a bar out with a group of friends, and at first they were laughing at me, and by the middle of it, they were all the guys at least were sitting around my phone watching it too. So. Um, yeah, it is an interesting day and age. And we were talking about merchandise, and I mentioned the pro wrestling crate, and I've got tons of stuff. And since it is July, I want to officially announce Christmas in July for the My 123 Cents Action Figure Drive. We've already got a good start. The Royal Rumble contest always gets us kicked off. I was able to buy a couple dozen AEW figures, and I've been buying a few things here and there. But if you want to contribute this year, specifically in July for the Christmas in July promotion, for every $10 or every action figure that you donate, you will get a prize. Like I said, I've got a prize vault full of things like socks, T-shirts, uh, pencils, and pens, and
Sunglasses,
sunglasses. Like,
balls.
and when I say pens, I mean like the lapel pens, not ink pens. So there's all kinds of things that you will get in exchange.
Autographed photos.
Yeah, in exchange for your $10. And then for every $5, if you just donate $5 through Venmo or Cash App or whatever, you'll be entered in to win a big Christmas in July prize at the end of the month on July 31st. I'll do the drawing for that. But want to let people know the information is in the description for this podcast or on any of the My 123 Cents or my personal socials. So check it out. Let us know if you're interested in donating. And again, this year, my wife actually last year kind of was like, in my head, it's always like more figures is better. So if I had 30 figures to donate, or, one year I set a goal at like 250, and I think we got close at like 232. And that's the close. I think that's probably the most we've ever gotten up to. And to me, that was always a good feeling. But, it's a lot, it's those, and I'm not knocking any donation, but a lot of it was the clearance figures or things that you would find at Ollie's that, there's Ric Flairs that are $3 a piece or whatever the case may be. And my wife said to me this past year, she's like, have you ever thought about like just buying a couple of the more bigger items? Because these kids are waking up and they're getting the figures, but maybe they want a ring or, some of the accessories. And so I'm going to aim for that this year with the cash donations that come in, putting that in and buying hopefully maybe a couple of, either rings or some of the sets. Cause I know a lot of in AEW, I think with Jazzwares, I think they're announcing a lot at Comic-Con. Are you going to Comic-Con this year, Chad?
I doubt it. Again, being unemployed, I have the time, but I just have to figure out how to get tickets.
Yeah.
So I should ask around, see if anybody that I know has extras.
Well, yeah. Which I think this year Comic-Con, the big action figure from WWE is going to be the John Cena, the Ultimate John Cena one.
Is it the invisible one?
I don't think it's the invisible one. I think it's the one where it looks like he's running to the ring. But I do, and I don't collect a lot of like the current stuff other than like Gobbledygook, which was more retro. But I do think I want that invisible John Cena if I can get my hands on that. But I did get the Macho, and I always buy them thinking I'm going to try to resell it. And I bought the Macho King or the Macho Man Slim Jim one a few years ago, and I ended up keeping it. And I did want that Hulk Hogan and Zeus because it came in the VHS cassette a few years ago. Now, according to the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast, they say the last couple of years, the Muhammad Ali and last year, Shawn Michaels, it was him ziplining in from WrestleMania. They claim that those didn't do as well as some of the previous ones have done. So, and they're kind of speculating because, it is Cena's last year, and we'll talk more about that in a minute as well. But apparently there's a ton of new Cena merch coming out, to kind of commemorate that, figures and obviously all the other stuff that comes along with that. So they may oversaturate with Cena in 2025, which I get, but and I know you're not as big a collector as I am with those kinds of things, but I just again want to remind folks about the toy drive, the wrestling figure drive, and I'll be honest, the last couple of years not being associated with any wrestling company, it has not been, because their fans would come and bring stuff or whatever, and I just haven't had the same impact or the same reach. But again, being able to take 50 or 60 figures and donate them, it's good. It goes to the Toys for Tots campaign here in Southern Illinois specifically. 5 counties are served and hundreds of kids, I'm sure. So if you're so inclined, make a donation or donate to your own local drive or wherever it is that you are listening from. And just trying to do a little good in the world. And it's Christmas in July, so let's celebrate. So said my piece on that. Chad, I did want to ask you again about AEW.
Yep.
I don't know. Have we talked about this part of it or not? Compare, contrast a Raw or SmackDown versus a Dynamite Collision, because I know they tape Collision then, right? You said after Dynamite.
I mean, it depends on the week, but yeah, they usually are now taping either after Dynamite or they'll do a Collision taping on Thursday and air on Saturday, or they'll do a live Collision on Thursday.
Do they do dark matches still or not?
I mean, this week, normally they do Ring of Honor tapings as well.
Oh, yeah.
And this week we only got one, 45-second dark match. Fittingly, it was the Dark Order who took on the Frat House. And it was short, sweet, and the promo before the match took way longer than the actual match. So
how is it comparable? Because we always thought, and now 30 years ago this summer, we sat through that marathon of WWE superstars and Coliseum home videotaping. Are AEW events like that? Because I know their pay-per-views tend to run.
Well, 2 shows, 2-hour shows. The show started at 5, obviously, because Dynamite was live, and went a little past 7 here on the West Coast. And then Collision started probably around 7:30, 7:35, and went to about 9:30.
So do they take a break and kind of reset things or not? I think so. Yeah,
they give you time, to go to the bathroom or in my case, right when the main event of Dynamite started, I went to use the bathroom and then grabbed something to eat, and I placed my order for just a simple burger. Lady took my money, walks away, comes back, it's like, oh, it's going to be 10 minutes before the burger's ready. And they gave me a free churro because I had to wait. Yeah. But yes, I listened to the main event from the concourse and missed the entire match. So luckily it wasn't a match that I was that invested, which is why I went to the bathroom at the start. If I was more into Japanese wrestling, it would have been a big match, I'm sure. And I have it recorded so I can go back and watch it. But they give you a little bit of a break, and then I think Collision goes a little bit quicker because they don't have to worry about live television, and they can add in the commercial breaks later in editing.
Let me ask you about this, and I'm not trying to get controversial. I don't know that it is controversial. Maybe it's not. Just based on what I have seen, kind of as a result of it. And again, I think part of it is the tribalism that is involved for wrestling. And I don't know if it was this week while you were there, or if it was the week before, but Hangman Adam Page clotheslined
Marina Shafir. Yeah, that was this week.
Okay. Yeah. I've seen varying reactions, but a lot of negativity because it's a male attacking a female. This has been the norm in wrestling since I can remember. I can remember the Honky Tonk Man pushing Elizabeth down in 1987, and that was a big deal back then. Jake the Snake slapping her, when Jake had turned heel. So we have seen men and women, and a lot of times China kind of broke that barrier, if you will. Yeah. And I know we are not, we're 2 old dudes talking about this, so our opinions probably don't amount to a hill of beans. But I do see a lot of online discussion about it, and some folks are like, well, if WWE had done this, you wouldn't have had a problem. It's because it's AEW, and I'm somewhere in the middle. I understand that it's all part of the show. It's all scripted. It's she did not get in there not knowing she was going to get closed. but I also understand the image, if you will, that it kind of portrays. And for that younger crowd, it could be influential. But we've been dealing with that since we were kids when Tipper Gore was trying to ban uh, uh, NWA, not the wrestling organization, but those kinds of records and those, so it's like, as a parent, I think there's a hell of a lot of responsibility that is not being taken on making, I watched that stuff and my parents made sure to, not that they had to tell me repeatedly, but I knew not to go on the playground and start drop kicking people or, hitting them with chairs or whatever the case may be. But I know society today is different than it was back in that time period. So I'm not knocking anyone, but I'm also saying lighten up. It's part of the show. And go back and watch the 1999 match between Jeff Jarrett and China, and women's power, and Nia Jax when they threw out R-Truth that one year at the Rumble, and so I don't know. To me, it's kind of a stupid argument because people are getting tribalistic, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that review I showed you the other day at 16 Candles, where somebody who didn't see it when it first came out, probably a younger reviewer, just hated on it for things that, yes, did not age well, have not aged well. But, again, you have to take things in context of the time that they were made. And if, I mean, you can say, yes, this is right, but to be like, oh, it's terrible just because of that is wrong.
Yeah.
Regarding Marina Shafir getting clotheslined by Hangman Adam Page, well, first to your point of China and Nia Jax, I think there's a difference between someone of their stature versus, say, Alexa Bliss or Zelina Vega. If, a male wrestler were to beat up one of them, it would be more, I don't think it would be as equal, given the size difference, which, again, doesn't make it right just because China and Nia are bigger people. Probably not, but you can, I guess, suspension of disbelief, believing they can hold their own.
Yes.
The problem I had with Hangman clotheslining Marina Shafir was she stood there for way too long while he set up, and she just stared at him. And it's like, what's coming, move.
Right,
and
right.
So, but Marina is also one who is presented as being just as tough as the guys. One of the guys, and all Hangman did was clothesline her. It wasn't like he knocked her down and then stomped a mud hole in her and walked it dry. It's just, hey, Moxley, you're going to leave your badass female behind. Well, she's going to get what I'm going to give to you later on. And so,
and is Paige the baby face in this?
Yes. So yeah, I mean, I had no problem with it. And Marina, in the storyline that they're telling, if she gets involved, it's usually with Willow Nightingale, who will come out. And so it is, female on female.
Yeah.
But during the last, I think it was the last pay-per-view, they had the Anarchy in the Arena match, which was 5-on-5, four guys, and Willow and Marina. And so fighting was, I think it was mostly Marina and Willow fighting, but they would occasionally get and mix it up with the guys. But again, it's, the slogan from Chikara was always equal rights, equal fights.
Yeah.
But again, you're dealing with people who are more
evenly sized
than, say, a gigantic male and small female. Yeah.
Well, as you were talking,
which I think if it would have been China versus the Matt Cardona's Broski brother, the world's tallest midget, I can't think what his name is. That would be a different story too. Would that be okay for him to get beat up by Nia Jax? You know who I'm talking about?
No.
It's somebody that wrestles, I think, for GCW, but it's like Matt Cardona's little.
Oh, okay.
But he's a very smaller than average guy.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Not Hornswoggle.
Not Hornswoggle, no. Although I guess Hornswoggle would also be the, if, would it be okay for Nia Jax to beat up Hornswoggle?
Right. Yeah. Well, and as you were talking too, I had a flashback to Sensational Sherry. I mean, look at all the ass whipping she took.
Yeah.
With Hogan and Warrior and Dusty Rhodes and you know and all that. And you know, obviously Jesse Ventura was always the one crying foul on that, and Vince, well, she deserved that or whatever. And, you know, but it is an interesting, you know, as fans and looking back on it at all, it's and I know WWE has kind of come and gone with that. I know they did I can't remember when they did that intergender tag tournament where they were not, it was females fighting females and guys.
Yeah, you had to tag out whenever.
Yeah, that's what I thought, and that's typically what they do. But
Yeah.
you know, it's like back in the day when you throw.
But you know, look at Andy Kaufman.
Yeah,
You know,
right. I mean, that's
I don't know anything about him. I'm just saying, look at Andy Kaufman.
that's what brought him into the whole
Yeah.
fold and kind of changed that trajectory, I think, in Memphis too, for sure. Well, since we're on the topic of women, we're just throwing out some random things that are going on. You know, January, July 12th is being touted as a very big day in professional wrestling, at least by Conrad Thompson and his string of podcasts. So that's where I kind of got the idea for this week's episode. I know AEW All In is a stadium show. It's the first stadium show in the United States for AEW happening that day. Then allegedly that night is Goldberg's last match. We have the Great American Bash going on. Right. When is the bash happening? Is that during the day?
Saturday afternoon. Yeah.
Okay.
That's going, I think, more head to head with
All In. Yeah. And then, of course, on Sunday is Evolution. And let's jump to Evolution first, and then we'll dig into the other stuff since we were talking about the women a minute ago. And again, two old dudes talking here that probably should just look away and keep on moving. But you had sent me something interesting about kind of the somebody had tweeted it about, and I don't have it in front of me to quote it verbatim, but it was kind of talking about how women's wrestling in you know the 80s, it was pretty much non-existent. And then, you know, in the 90s we got some of the TNA, not Total Nonstop Action, and then it was more of the divas in the bra and bikini matches and pillow fights and that kind of stuff. And it really wasn't until Charlotte and Sasha Banks and Bayley and Becky Lynch and all of those women kind of, for lack of a better word, revolutionized that movement and got it going. And I would argue that I think TNA was probably doing a good job with that, with the Knockouts division, even before WWE started it. And then we saw in Chikara, like you said, you know, Sarah Del Rey and those types of women who were in there with the guys and having good, solid matches as well. To where we are today, where, you know, we've seen a set of women main event WrestleMania. We have seen a women's Royal Rumble, a women's Money in the Bank, and women, you know, women are having the same. It's equality now for both. You know, and I think next year's Royal Rumble is a 2-night affair where I'm assuming one night the women will close and one night the men will close. So
I just know next year's Royal Rumble should be females will be interesting because it's in Saudi Arabia. So
yeah, I have seen a lot of talk about that too. So that will be
a lot of bodysuits. Yeah. Which, real quick, I had this thought last night. Totally tangenting. I think. I'm going to use CM Punk as the example since he's the big talk about Saudi Arabia. But I think it would have been interesting if he would have came out in a bodysuit as well to kind of like show solidarity with the female wrestlers who are not allowed to show any skin.
Yeah. And that's kind of where we're heading with this is, you know, the argument on Twitter, or I don't know what social media platform you sent me that from, but the guy was stating that, you know, they evolved and it got to more wrestling, but now, and I think the photo was Rhea Ripley and Stephanie Valkyria. You know, some of the things they do, some of the clothing they wear. I don't think the clothing has changed from when we went from divas to kind of I'm just going to say 4 horsewomen era, if you will, and people will know what I'm talking about, to where we are today. And I don't think what they wear I don't think they're trying to over sexualize it, I guess is what I'm getting at. And if they are, I mean, I'm not picking on anyone, but why is it okay for Abdullah the Butcher to walk around without a shirt on, who has bigger boobs than most of the women on the roster? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
go to any water park in USA, and there are big belly, big flappy peck guys walking around, and the women, and I get it, and I'm not trying to start a whole other kind of
Mhm.
movement or argument or anything like that, but I think it is. I guess what I'm getting at is, I don't think that they're being demeaned.
Well,
Ripley chooses what she wears. I don't think she's doing that because there's some old pervert in the back saying, "Oh, go out there and show your ass off." You know what I'm saying?
yeah. Yeah, let me kind of fill in a little the play, because I tried looking for what I sent you, and I can't remember if it was Twitter or Instagram, how I sent it. And I send you so many reels on Instagram a day that I'd have to scroll back. Like, anyway, but it was something about, like, in the 90s, it was hypersexualized, and now they've progressed from the sexualization of the female wrestlers, but now the sexualization is coming from the women themselves. So the way Rhea pins her opponents, Stephanie Valkyries, for lack of a better term, the skull effing, which I don't know what, I think they call it the devil's kiss, but it's where she grabs, and just, I mean, I guess you could put Liv Morgan in there with the way that she's, the relationship with Dominic Mysterio. And so I think trying to choose my words correctly and consciously, it's not so much, again, it's not bra and panties matches, but the sexualization is there, but it's more, I guess it's, by today's definition, it's more empowering because it's the women choosing to do it themselves.
I agree, but I mean, what I don't understand is Randy Orton comes out in less clothing than any of those women.
Yeah.
Matt Cardona, any of those guys that are all jacked up and wearing a Speedo, nobody, I don't ever remember anybody saying they're being sexualized or they're being sexual in their look. Maybe Rick Rude when he did the gyration of his hips, but that was part of the gimmick.
Well, here's something going back to AEW from this, or actually Collision from this week. FTR took on the Outrunners, and during the match, which I would recommend for you to check it out because it is very much an old school JCP tag match. It's Rock and Roll Express versus Midnight Express pattern. But the crowd started getting, was just giving Dax Hardwood a lot of flack for being bald, because that's a new thing in AEW is if you're bald, you get, and at one point he was facing the hard camera side. So his face is facing hard camera. His backside is to the crowd. And he just pulls his trunks down a bit and then pulls them back up. You don't see women doing that. And you look back at Ric Flair, how much of Ric Flair's ass crack have we seen over the years?
Right. More than any female in the ring, I can tell you that.
Maybe not outside the ring, but yes.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's much ado about nothing, but I don't know. You sent it, and I thought it is an interesting talking point, but again, I don't know if we're the most qualified.
No, and I think it's one of those things where I think it's trying. I see the point it's trying to make, but I feel it's a point being made just to be. I guess if there's something on Twitter, it's clickbaity. It's it's just engagement farming to. Because I don't think anyone is really sitting around talking about it. But then again, I'm going to keep going off on random tangents here. I sent you a photo of the book I'm currently reading about 80s movies.
Yeah.
And the first chapter is all about Dirty Dancing and comparing how abortion and sex is treated in that movie as opposed to how it's treated in early 2000s movies, where they said it's more... women enjoyed the sex more in the 80s movies than they do in today's movies, even though we're more, I guess, sexually liberated today. And it's the whole thing. And I'm trying to condense it into like 5 seconds worth of recap. It's way too much thought being put into contrasting. It's why I hated film school and film classes, because it's like I'm like, I just want to watch Dirty Dancing and enjoy it. I don't need to break down the political ramifications of Johnny Castle being objectified by Jennifer Grey, and I don't know why I used one character name and one actor's real name, but
you didn't want to put Jennifer in the corner.
Yeah, it's all about the Swayze, R.I.P.
Anyway,
back to wrestling.
Yeah, back to wrestling, and we talked about it a few minutes ago, but All In back in the United States, I guess.
First time in the United States.
Yes, should say that.
I guess unless you count the very first All In, which was the launch of AEW.
Yeah,
as a promotion.
I forget the band. There's a band performing at Wembley this year that.
Oh, Coldplay.
Yeah, Coldplay. And that's why they're not doing it. It sounds like they're trying to make Wembley kind of their home base for All In. Obviously, this year it's in Texas. It's in the United States. Had you contemplated going? How far of a drive would that be for you? That's probably.
It's too long of a drive. Yeah, I would have flown. Yeah, because I was just there. Like I said, I was there opening day of baseball this year, which is when MJF was there to throw out the first pitch for the Texas Rangers, and they had advertisements on the elevator doors. So it was good to see that they were getting some promotion for the show there. I would have liked to have gone, but again, I didn't want to go I wouldn't want to go by myself. I know dragging you along to AEW would be like pulling teeth. My girlfriend probably also, because she wasn't real enthused that I went for 4 days on a Texas road trip earlier to go back. She'd be like, why don't we do something I want to do? And I'm like, I don't know, because all the stuff you want to do is boring. So I would have liked it, been there just because it is. I don't know if you can compare it to being there WrestleMania. Maybe it is, but like I said, first time in a stadium for AEW. But also, I don't think baseball field stadiums. I'm curious to see how it comes off. But WWE has done, I think, Royal Rumbles from baseball stadiums in the last few years, and I just don't think the setup. I know WrestleMania 19 also was at Seattle's baseball park. I just don't think baseball stadiums are set up with good sight lines for wrestling.
That makes sense.
A football stadium is more of a square, so you have equal vision, whereas baseball, I don't know. I'll be curious to see, but
I feel like the summer of '91, Busch Stadium.
Busch, used to do
did a WWF show.
Yeah, but I'm sure it was. Were they selling 20,000, 30,000 seats?
Right. Or? Yeah, it was just a house show, so who knows what the setup looked like. I remember wanting to go to that, but we were.
Yeah, and I believe Hulk Hogan actually body slammed Andre the Giant at Shea Stadium well before WrestleMania 3, when Andre had never been body slammed.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about this Shea Stadium show. So what are, and I haven't seen any numbers. I know tickets are still available, but if this is a success in the United States for AEW, do you think they will continue to do other stadium shows? Because I know, and I'm not picking on them, but I know for a while they were doing those bigger arena shows, and it wasn't a good visual on TV with the lack of seating. And so I think they've moved to the venue you were at last week, I think, was a smaller venue, but it looked completely filled.
Yeah. And part of the reason I think they went to Ontario, ran in Ontario before. It's very close to Rancho Cucamonga, California, which is just a fun name to say. And if you haven't seen it, I recommend you look up the made-for-TV movie Camp Cucamonga. If you remember that one with Jaleel White and Candace Cameron, Jennifer Aniston.
I do remember.
Random. But Rancho Cucamonga is the home of the founding fathers, the Young Bucks. And so I told you, when we were sitting third row hard camera side, and all of a sudden this parade of kids, probably like 8 kids, come walking in, and then a couple of adults, and then the last 2 adults came in. I'm like, oh, it's the Young Bucks parents. And so all the kids were there. I think their kids and nieces, nephews, cousins, whatever. At one point they played something for the Young Bucks or something. I yelled out, "Young Bucks suck." And I knew they were saying, and the mom turned around and was like, "Those are my boys." Like I was just waiting. I wanted them to do like some dirty, underhanded double teaming move, so that I could yell out, "Your parents raised you better than that," just to see what type of reaction I would have got. But anyway, yes, going back, smaller arenas. I think for the weekly shows, the smaller arenas are good. I think because they can draw a good crowd on pay per view, but the weekly shows are drawing less. And we've talked about it before. If you go to Raw or SmackDown, you can buy your tickets a couple months in advance and pretty much know what you're going to see. Because WWE has very repetitive shows. With whoever's feuding, they're going to be there. Right. AEW, it's all like whatever's up. Tony Khan, which way the wind is blowing the week before the show. Tony Khan's like, "Hey, I forgot this guy's under contract. Let's bring him in and put him in a match," or So I think the smaller crowds, which is an issue with AEW, is if you don't know what you're getting, you're going to wait until closer to time to buy, which brings us back to All In, where people are buying tickets before anything is announced.
They're disappointed.
They're disappointed if they don't get, but at least they're not getting Jey. Yeah, but they're not getting Gunther versus Jey Uso, so that's eat. I think it's
a box of cereal.
Eat. But I mean, from what I've seen, I think about 20,000 seats have been sold for All In, which obviously is not anywhere close to selling out for the stadium, but it is, with ticket prices, the second highest, or the highest non-WWE US gate. So again, what makes a success? Is it the gate? Is it the amount of people? Is it the quality of the show?
To me, it's who's coming back next week and the week after, and you just keep building on the momentum. I mean, that's what wrestling really is. Like we've said before, you may be pissed off about the results from this week, but wait a week, wait 2 weeks, wait a month, and hopefully the story progresses or moves into a direction that you want to see it. But it has its ebbs and flows, just like everything else. But for wrestling, it truly is one of those things where it's the never-ending story in some cases, and some storylines may come to an end, and you're not happy with that, but it's going to pick up, and John Cena, literally the end of an era coming up, and who will pick up that torch and continue to run with it, we'll see, and we'll talk more about that later in the year. As I read something though the other day, he's only got 15 dates left, which that's a lot, or that's not a lot considering there's still 5 months left in the year. So
I mean, that's 3. You figure one appearance a month for whatever PLE, and then an appearance on SmackDown or Raw the week before. Maybe one
additional. Jack would not allow this, though. He'd be defending that title every 30 days.
When was again before this week? When was the last time the New Day defended their tag team titles? When was the last time Io Sky defended her women's title?
Well, it's because Jack Tunney's not around.
I know. We need a decent president. Let's bring back the rule book. Let's, I think someone needs to go and read that thing again. And tag ropes, you got to hold them if you're going to make a tag.
Exactly. Yes. So, do you have any big expectations for All In? I mean, where is this? Because again, I don't watch enough AEW. Is this on the scale of WrestleMania? Like, where would you compare the AEW pay-per-views on a WWE for a WWE fan? Where would All In fit?
I mean, I'm not sure where, but I'll say maybe this one is more of a SummerSlam level, even though it is, again, they launched with All In, it was their biggest show. Would it be WrestleMania? Maybe, but I don't think they truly have a WrestleMania type show, just in the spectacle and the pageantry. Maybe that's why I'm confused. There's nothing of that.
Just scale. Based on what I hear other people, because the thing I hear every time is AEW does pay-per-view amazing, and to me there hasn't been any. And back in the day, it was easy for WWE and for WCW to kind of, because we weren't getting them everywhere. So we could
Mhm.
differentiate and know that Starcade or WrestleMania or SummerSlam was going to be something special and spectacular because there was a lot of buzz around it. And then, of course, you saw the fallout from those events. And now,
No.
even with WWE, I think to an extent, I still think they do a good job of promoting WrestleMania, but it feels like it's always the countdown to that next show.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, especially right now with the way WWE is doing everything on a 2-week schedule.
Yeah.
With the amount of shows. But as far as what I'm expecting from All In, try to keep expectations in check just because you never know what's going to happen. Again, there's maybe been 2 AEW pay-per-views in their history where I'm like, kind of walked away and went, it was fine, but not anything spectacular. I think this one has the potential to be really good. Again, it's all going to come down to the booking. And if Jon Moxley retains the title, I think a lot of people are going to be upset. But depending on what happens, I still don't think there's speculation. And again, this goes into fan booking versus reality. Fan booking has always been like the expectation that Darby Allin will be the one to come back and dethrone Moxley. And this week, when he and Hangman Page were having their little verbal spat, Moxley said something to Hangman about being the champion is not the top of the mountain, or you got to climb higher, or something along those lines. Which, what did Darby Allin just do? Climb Mount Everest. Is that a play? I don't see that as much of an innuendo as when he said calling yourself the best in the world is just basic bitch stuff. You gotta, if you want to be champion. I took that to be more of a dig at CM Punk than anything, especially given Hangman Page and CM Punk's history. But I think the matches should be really good. I think the show will go on way too long, as AEW is wont to do. But I'm looking forward to it. For whatever reason, they are doing a early start time, so it starts at noon here on the West Coast. So I'm looking at noon to 5, perfect timing for a show. And
I think part of it is the Saturday night's main event conflict, if you will. And they
I don't know when they switched the timing, what the initial scheduling, was. If it was earlier, and then if they scheduled Saturday night's main event, but then they added Great American Bash. And then
I would imagine, though, 2:00 Texas and on a July afternoon is going to be hot as hell.
Well, thankfully the stadium has a retractable roof, so they can close it off, turn on the AC. Which when I was there for a game, I was sitting right under the AC, so I know that the AC is nice and cool.
Okay.
But
that's interesting. I didn't know it had a retractable, because I also, any WrestleMania that we went to, and I think the year we were at, was it MetLife? Or what
29, it started raining. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the last thing you want, is to be caught in a downpour or snowstorm. In some cases, snow.
Yeah.
Or the heat like that. So that's good to hear that they have that.
Yeah. And actually, adding on to everything that's going on, Friday is the Ring of Honor Super Card of Honor pay-per-view, which about 5 people know about. I'm going to guess the Von Erichs are going to be on that show because they are trios champions in Ring of Honor, and they're from Texas, so it would make sense, especially the Dallas area.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they haven't put them on the all-in show. But
well, I know Kevin is part of a panel at Starcast, which is going on too. So, do you think, though, that with would Ring of Honor be better served if it wasn't? And I get why they do it because of the economics of it, but would it be better served if it was its own separate entity and had its own weekend or its own Saturday night event, if you will, or Sunday night event, than kind of being the afterthought of the AEW pay-per-view?
I think having it on the same weekend is fine because then you are getting kind of that synergy. I think the biggest problem with Ring of Honor is it doesn't have television. It's only streamed on the Ring of Honor's website, which you have to subscribe to. And when Ring of Honor first started, back at the heyday of the early 2000s indie scene, that's where you went for wrestling. Just the focus being on the wrestling more than the entertainment portion. Now with AEW owning it, it's more, I see Ring of Honor more as like AEW NXT, where it's, a lot of, and there's no good separation between AEW and Ring of Honor. Like Ring of Honor champions will just show up on AEW television, or people that were fighting in Ring of Honor will show up and you have no idea who they are, but you're supposed to treat them like, they're something special because they're on a 15 match winning streak that no one has ever seen. So I think separating the two companies and giving Ring of Honor its own identity back would be better suited than. But I think putting shows on the same weekend isn't a big deal.
Well, and speaking of same shows, we talked about it earlier. NXT does have Great American Bash on Saturday. I haven't watched NXT in a long time. I see the results and stuff. Don't have the CW.
Same.
But the big thing is, to me, it's Saturday night's main event. This has seemingly, up until a couple of days ago, been a one-match card. And I still think that most people are talking about that one match. And that's Gunther versus Goldberg. Goldberg's last match. I don't think Goldberg has officially said that yet, but WWE is kind of touting it as Goldberg's last match. Do you think putting the title back on Gunther for this match hurts anything? Could it have just been Gunther versus Goldberg and Goldberg puts Gunther, or will Goldberg put Gunther over? Where are you on this whole? Because I think we both acknowledged that we're not. I never have been, and I'm not knocking the guy, but I've just Goldberg and never clicked for me in WW or in WCW, in his first run in WWE, and all these return things. To me, he's just but I know there's a lot of people that don't feel that way. So. Where are you? What do you see happening with all of this?
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, I think putting the title on Gunther hurt Rikishi's feelings, and we really need to be more cognizant of how Rikishi feels. I don't think this match needs the title to be in there, and I think the build is a good idea, poorly executed, because I don't remember when the last time Goldberg was on the show. Like I think it's been at least 6 months or so when Gunther was insulting Goldberg. Yeah. And now all of a sudden Goldberg comes back like, you insulted my family. I'm going to take, it's like, dude, I did that like 6 months ago. Where are you just busy this time, So if you want to if that's the story, is Goldberg coming back to avenge his family, like maybe you needed something more in the time in between. I still think Bret Hart should be the special referee for this match. I also, by putting it, even though they are promoting it as Goldberg's last match, putting the title on the line seems just so unnecessary, because either Goldberg loses in his last match, you're like, okay, whatever, or he wins, and then he has to vacate the title, or is he going to stick around until he loses? I mean, it's the same thing that when Sting retired his last match as tag team champion, which allegedly he didn't want to do, but Tony Khan was very adamant he wanted Sting to go out champion. It's just like there's no point in that then if you're not passing the torch, so I'm with you. This match has is probably out of every match that's going on this weekend is probably in the lower third of matches that I care about. But
I disagree with you on that. I'm not saying I care about it, but I'm the most intrigued by it because there are several different scenarios, and I'll explain those in a minute.
maybe that's it. Maybe the intriguement is there, but the match quality, I'm not.
Oh yeah, the match quality is not going to.
Yeah.
One scenario that I've heard discussed is Goldberg wins and Seth Rollins cashes in.
Mm-hmm.
That would be one way that vacate the title, but it almost feels like a wasted. I don't want to say waste, but then do you take away that feel good moment of that last match? But then again, you look back at other last matches, Kurt Angle and Ric Flair specifically, they lost.
Which Ric Flair?
Yes, I'm sorry. WrestleMania 26. Four. WrestleMania 24 Ric Flair match, 2008. He loses and goes out. I mean, there was a lot of pageantry and fanfare. Will they do the same kind of treatment then on Raw Monday? Will they do a send off for Goldberg of sorts? I don't know. Mm-hmm. Nothing to me will ever replicate that Ric Flair send off. Like you mentioned with Sting, it was an interesting choice to have him go out on top. I don't necessarily think that it hurt. You talk about that torch passing moment. I don't think you necessarily have to win to get that torch. And I think that at this point, if Gunther wins, does it take away the celebration of Goldberg? Does it make, because Goldberg has come in and he's dominated every time. Brock Lesnar, I think he lost to Roman Reigns that last time he came back through. But I didn't want Gunther to win the championship back. I think Jay, and I know we disagree on this, but I think they could have given him a little more time with it to see. And I'm not being forced by Rikishi to say this, but
real quick, I think if you look at a lot of recent titled reigns across the board in WWE, look at New Day, Sky, all this. Who's really had a good title reign that's memorable?
And I think that's the thing too. It's like, does longevity equal a more memorable reign, or is it the matches that you have during the course of that reign? Because I think Cody was champ just over a year. And really, to me, the Kevin Owens matches were the ones that stood out in that run, and nothing else. It was all just kind of whatever. And then that could be a whole nother show next time around, or as we get closer to SummerSlam. But I guess my bottom line is, I think, and that's the thing. I don't know I legitimately don't, have a prediction or whatever, because I could see them going in so many different directions. If they have Gunther win clean, or Goldberg wins it and we get the cash in, or Goldberg wins it and they announce a tournament or something to vacate the title. It's interesting, and that's where I'm leaving it at interesting. I'm not saying it's a good interesting or a bad interesting. But again, both players in this match, I'm not a huge Gunther fan either, and I know that's probably controversial to some. Who would I want to see Goldberg in there against? I don't even know, because again, I'm not a Goldberg fan. So I think Goldberg was one of those guys, and I know I don't want to say allegedly, but I just feel like there were so many players in that Attitude Era that made a difference. And I think Goldberg caught fire and got that great push and whatever. But if you look at his career, really, that even if you count when he started wrestling in 97, WCW is out of business by 04. Early 01. Less than 4 years. And this guy is getting like this. And again, I know it just depends on, The Rock probably would fall, but I think The Rock is in a whole stratosphere. But I'm not excited in terms of participants, but I'm intrigued by the potential outcome. Yes, is what I'm trying to say through all of this.
Yeah, and I think part of that intrigue is due to, or can be summed up also with how crazy is WWE booking going to be? Because is it going to be Goldberg wins and goes out champ? Is it he wins, Seth cashes in, Brock Lesnar comes back and destroys Goldberg? There's so many things that, and not necessarily saying any of them are good or bad. It's just, which again, whole nother discussion. What makes for something to be interesting? Then is it just the quality, or is it the shenanigans all around? Because kind of piggybacking off of the comment about or memorable title reigns. Roman Reigns held the title for almost 4 years. To me, I wasn't interested in any of it because it was all the same match, which is very NWO like. It's what we're still seeing now with, the new bloodline, where it's just like the match itself is secondary to whatever shenanigans come in at the end. And so I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I will watch Saturday night's main event after it's over, after watching All In. But am I looking forward to it? Not really. And I think I'm trying to think what else is on the card on the show, which I think the rest of the show looks more interesting.
I know it's Seth Rollins and LA Knight.
Okay, I take that back.
And Randy Orton's wrestling Drew McIntyre.
Drew McIntyre.
Those are the only other matches that I can remember seeing. I'm sure they'll throw in a couple before we get there. Do you think WWE will go nostalgic with this being Goldberg's last match and being in Atlanta? Will we see any other WCW influence on that show? Or should
maybe. I'm like, can they get Kevin Nash there? Can they pay him enough to show up? I was gonna say, what was I gonna say? Oh, will Jesse Ventura be there to crap all over the finish?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts this week as we start to hit that home stretch?
Yeah, I mean, real quick, Evolution, something people have been asking, fans have been asking for the past couple of years. Can't remember when the first Evolution was. Was it 2018?
I think it was October of 2018. Yeah.
Which I've been wanting to go back and re-watch and just remember who else was on that, because I think there's a lot of talent that's now in AEW that was on that show, or talent that has now moved into prominent positions in WWE. Opening the can of worms. Is Evolution set up to fail? Because again, it's the fourth show on a stacked weekend, fifth if you count Ring of Honor, or fourth if you count Ring of Honor. Yes, fifth if you count Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
The Major League Baseball All-Star Game is in Atlanta as well. Events are happening this weekend. Beyonce is in Atlanta on Sunday. Which granted, that's for the people in Atlanta. Obviously, the rest of the country can watch the Evolution, but is the crowd going to be there? What is the overlap in the crowd between Beyonce and WWE? And the fact that the show has kind of just been booked a week out. Does that matter? Or again, as we've said with WrestleMania, it doesn't matter what's on the show. WrestleMania is going to be the attraction. So is Evolution its own attraction that will get people to watch no matter what's on the show?
Yeah, and I think I saw that Trish Stratus is wrestling Tiffany Stratton.
And say that 5 times fast.
For the championship. And to me, again, it's kind of like Goldberg wrestling.
Yeah.
I love Trish. Don't get me wrong, but it's like, could we have gotten something? And I honestly, I have not looked at the results or watched the entire promo, so I don't know what the story they're trying to tell there is. But I feel like they've been trying to push Tiffany as a baby lately, And now you're bringing Trish in, who, when the legend comes back, they always kind of get that baby pop no matter what. I don't know. To me, it feels weird putting her in that, just kind of cold back.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah. All right, yeah. Well, I guess the last thing that you can bring up, because I should have brought it up 20 minutes ago when we were talking about it, 30 minutes. The battle for indie god supremacy, Matt Cardona versus Shotzi Blackheart. Who you got?
Oh, I here's what I kind of think is going to happen. I think Matt's headed back to WWE, and I think this is all to pass the torch. But I could be wrong. I think that I love the fact that he has, again, he's kind of like that Cody Rhodes or Drew McIntyre, where he left the machine and made a name for himself, and I think arguably a big name, and especially they have all kinds of freedom. I'm talking about the major wrestling guys with Collect Major and the toy line and what they're doing. So I would almost think that that's just as lucrative as going back to WWE. I don't know, but you trade that freedom for kind of wrestling back in that machine, but who knows? I could be wrong. What do you think?
It's a good projection. I could see that. I don't know. Given again that what Cardona has said over the last couple of years about one, the freedom, and two, making as much money on the indies as he was making in WWE, which I find shocking, but I don't see his paycheck, so I don't know. Yeah, it's like, would he go back? And I think he's in TNA right now. So there is like the TNA WWE relationship going on. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's just, I Shotzi never really got prominently featured in WWE. I know a little bit of her pre-WWE career, and I know she had some injuries in WWE that kind of prevented, but for her to come back, like as soon as being released and going into the Indie King storyline with Matt Cardona seems very ballsy, I guess. It's just, and again, who knows? I think I read somewhere maybe where they live like they're neighbors, and so and I'm sure they've known each other, several years. So, because she has a big rubber girl figure coming out. So, it's interesting.
Yeah,
we'll see what happens. I don't know what show they're going to be fighting on, but we'll see. But speaking of Matt, going back real quick, last time I was on the show, I talked about reading Johnny B. Bad's book. This past week, I just read Mox on Mox by Mox. I think it's just, I don't know what it's actually, I think it's just called Mox. But it's John Mox.
Mox on Mox?
No. But it's John Moxley's book, and he talks about, like, if he ever goes back into WWE, he's getting paid a ton of money because he does not talk very favorably about WWE, and it's a good book. I recommend it. It's an interesting one. It's also, it's the way it's written is very Tarantino-esque, but yeah. So I don't know what I'm going with. Just read books, people. Turn off the TV. Read books.
Read books. Well, I think that is all the news that is fit to print, as they used to say back in the day. So for Chad Smart, I'm Kevin Huntsberger. Thanks for listening and or watching to this week's episode. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and we will see you next time.